In this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Rue Valley, which is an isometric RPG that I got to check out at Gamescom. I didn't get to play, this is not my footage of the game, but I was given a presentation by the developers of the game, who are Emotion Spark Studio, and this game is actually being published by Owlcat. If you didn't know, Owlcat is now doing game publishing as well as game development, and this is one of the first games that they're publishing, and it is a doozy. So what is Rue Valley? Rue Valley is essentially a very heavily narrative-driven experience. If you ever played Disco Elysium, you're going to see similarities between this game and that game almost immediately. And when I first saw it, I was like, wow, this looks a lot like Disco Elysium. And Disco Elysium is one of those once-in-a-blue-moon special games that if you haven't played, you absolutely should go play. And so when I saw this, I was like, holy cow, are we actually going to get another game that plays kind of like that? Now, obviously, Rue Valley is not the same as Disco Elysium. It's done in a little bit different of an art style. It's done in a comic book art style that you can see here, and not the kind of oil painting art style that Disco Elysium had. So that is one major difference. But the general premise of this game compared to that game is that the main character is like a 30-something-year-old dude who's basically got nothing going on in his life. He has no real motivation to do anything. He's kind of depressed. He is not the most social person. And, realistically, we all probably know at least one person like this in our life. This is a very relatable character, and at the beginning of the game, something that's very interesting is that you get to pick your personality traits, and there's sort of these 3 sliders that you choose from, and you have a certain amount of personality traits to allocate, and you have to allocate them all. And the thing is like the further direction you go in one trait or another, the worse it gets personality-wise. There are traits like impulsive, mindful, secretive, paranoid, and other traits, a lot of them being negative. There are some positive ones. But the general idea is that when you begin the game, you're going to be kind of not in great shape emotionally. Like, you're not in a great place. And the game is kind of about finding your way through all that as the main character. And that's all well and great, but it's the next bits that really fascinate me about this game. So the main character is actually stuck in a time loop or a time anomaly where he's reliving the same part of the same day over and over, kind of like Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray, if you ever saw that movie, however long ago it was at this point. It's a very old movie. But the general concept is he's reliving this time loop. And what's interesting is that because you're this kind of like really negative character who doesn't have a lot going on in his life, when you first start having interactions with these people, you don't have a lot of things that you can do. A lot of dialogue options are not available to you. For instance, if you're like a very nervous person or you're a very anxious person and that's part of your personality trait, when you go to talk to the receptionist, you can't just directly ask her the things that you would normally ask her if you were, in a role-playing game. You only have options that a nervous person or anxious person would ask, and depending on what your personality traits are, certain things will be grayed out or you'll have to select certain options, not unlike some situations in Disco Elysium. So as you progress through the first day, you'll have all these interactions with these characters that are in and around this kind of like motel area of the game, which is just kind of a normal setting. And you won't have the greatest interactions with them because of, who you are and how you are. But then when time resets and you go back to the beginning of the loop again, you'll know things about these characters that will allow you to change the dialogue that you have with them. So imagine that the first conversation you had with the receptionist, she's talking to someone on the phone and you hear her say something like, oh yeah, my cat's been missing for a week. Well, when you go into the next playthrough and you see the receptionist, you might be able to go up to her and be like, hey, did you find your cat? And she'll be like, huh? You get what I mean? Like, the knowledge that the player character has is the same knowledge that you have. So you're going to learn things, and each subsequent time that the time loop resets, you're going to know more and more things about these characters, which is going to change your interactions with them completely. And at the same time, your character is going to evolve emotionally. He's going to learn things about himself and become, hopefully less and less of a negative person, less and less of someone who doesn't have any motivation in life as he sort of sorts himself out. So more and more dialogue options are going to become available to you. You're going to be able to have more positive interactions. And it's kind of this that makes the gameplay loop. And I find that absolutely fascinating. Few games really revolve around this sort of gameplay. Obviously, Disco Elysium is the major one that everyone knows about. And in fact, the Disco Elysium developers actually played this game, or I was made aware that they had played this. So they're very aware of this game as well. And I think maybe it's possible that Disco Elysium has actually spawned a subgenre of games that are like Disco Elysium-like games. I don't know what you would call it exactly, but it's possible that it spawned a subgenre, and we might be seeing more and more of these games, considering how popular that game was. And of course, on top of all this is the humor element that, really made Disco Elysium popular. They had such dark humor in that game. This game also has humor wrapped in its dialogue responses, and I'm sure there are places where you're going to laugh your ass off. But in my opinion, so far from what I've seen, it doesn't have the really dark humor that Disco Elysium had, which I really love. It seems to be a little bit more light. Admittedly, I've only seen the very beginning part of the game, so it's possible that it gets darker and more funnier as time goes on. But there is a layer of humor in there, and I think that's really going to add to the game's experience. And the game is not just about evolving as a character, but it's also about discovering why this time anomaly is happening to you, and what is the cause of it, and why is it, taking place in Rue Valley. So it's kind of a mystery at the same time. So you're trying to figure out what's going on while you evolve as a character, and I think that adds another dimension to the game than just some sort of self-discovery game. In terms of development, I think this game is only available on PC. As far as I can tell, it's a PC-only game coming to Steam, and it doesn't currently have a release date, so I don't know when exactly it's coming out. It could be next year, could be the year after. I don't have a lot of information on this, but this is a game I think you can expect to see more of on our channel. We really, really loved Disco Elysium on this channel. I've had people telling me before the launch of Disco Elysium what a gem that game was, and I think this game is going to be a really spectacular game as well. I don't know if it'll be as good as Disco Elysium. I mean, that's an awfully high bar, but even if it was, pretty good, I would still be pretty happy with that. I generally like the concept of this game. It's intriguing, it's fun, the game is funny. So if you like Disco Elysium, you definitely want to keep an eye out on this one. So what do you guys make of this so far? Have you guys heard of Rue Valley before? Is this one still flying under the radar? I really want to get the word out about this game. Typically don't show off too many indie games on this channel, but this is one I absolutely think our community will love. What do you guys make of it? Let me know in the comments below.